Thank you so much, Rocco. Well, we got quite a family up here. Family in the room, in various forms. I don't know, all of a sudden the room filled up with a lot of other bodies besides the corporeal ones. Oh, yes. So what I'd like to do before I do anything more is invite those of you who have brought someone to share with us to just stand in your place, give us a name and your relationship to them, and maybe one sentence, if you would. So just starting at this end of the table, there's a photograph right behind the candle. All right.
That's Cantor Ed Vogel. Very, very deep.
A little louder.
Cantor Ed Vogel, who gave me so much and who lives within me to this day.
Right on. All right, and next to him is Jay Goodwin.
Jay was the founder of our congregation, and he was a really beautiful, loving man. And he adopted me as a daughter in the last year of his life.
And on the table in front of him are a couple of photos that you'll have to come up to the table to see. Oh, good, Mary.
Yeah. Oh, you mean to hold it up?
No, just tell us.
Oh, okay. This is my mother, who passed away some time ago, but I wanted to thank her for encouraging me to be a feminist and for a civil rights activist all the time.
Woohoo!
She would say, what are you doing for women?
Love that. Marvelous. And then the little oval, yes.
The other picture is my mom.
Okay.
Who was the most positive person I ever knew in my life, who gave me the gift of that I carry with me.
Oh my goodness. In case you didn't realize that things continue to affect the rest of the world, right? Long after we're gone. Thank you, both of you. And that's the two pictures there. So then we have the oval frame.
Yeah, that's me and my dog. My folks didn't want to be memorialized. That wasn't their thing. So that, her name was Sage. And she was the most incredible being on the planet. And because I do ceremony, she was part of the ceremony and knew when it was her time to come in and be a part of that. She knew the exact timing, and it was just very special. So her name was Sage, and she was.
Ah, beautiful. And I see Walt's name tag, and I see other things about Walt. Would you care to? It's been hanging on the bulletin board in the office.
At the base of Walt's picture that I brought is a picture of his mom, who was a woman who raised 4 sons and a daughter, pretty much on her own. And on the weekend that you all helped me host so many of those siblings and grandchildren that she never got to see, is also a picture of my friend who passed that weekend. Friend.
Oh, that's right.
So I have the 3 pictures there together, and just, you know, this was, I mean, this fellowship was his family and his home, and I appreciate that this was the weekend that you chose to memorialize them.
Thank you. Beautiful. And behind Walt there's a little one in a plastic frame. All right.
That's my partner Millie and I jumping the broomstick, getting married in front of lots of people in 1988. She died 10 years ago, but she was so full of love. She was an artist, and oh my gosh, her joy continues in me today, and I'm very grateful for her.
Beautiful. And behind that frame is a wooden frame with 3 guys. Those, I don't think any of their wives are present, but these are the 3 guys who made this space the way we are enjoying it. This was a veterinarian's office. This is a clinic. So, Sally, I don't remember everybody's names.
What?
The 3 guys.
Well, we have Ruth Baumrucker's husband,
Bruce. Paula Harrison's husband.
We got Paula Harrison's husband, Craig. And then Paul Cornett.
That's his T-shirt on that chair. That's Paul's T-shirt. All right. And so they're present in every nail. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then behind them is your friend, Dick.
Dick was my sweetheart, and we were together for 3 months before he passed away. And he was so full of love and light, and I'm so grateful to have had those 3 months with him. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And then I've got, it looks like a World War II guy over there in a frame.
Well, that must be my dad. He spent his career in the Marine Corps, and he passed away in 1989, which was about the time that I realized how smart he really was. I listened to more of his advice a little younger. I knew I had a little different path, but he's the one that I credit with my pacifism, my anti-war. He took me in front of the draft board in Salinas in 1971 and got me out of military service. And I don't think there are too many
Marine Corps guys that did do that.
that did that. There are a few, but he did that. And the other two pictures I brought,
Yes.
Karen's mother, sitting in that fan chair, kind of in the center, just to the right of there. She was a bartender at in Jules Mays, which is the oldest bar in Seattle. She was about that tall. She weighed about 85 pounds soaking wet. And if you ever crossed her, she would lay you out.
That's Karen's mom, by the way.
My great joy is when Karen and I got together almost 20 years ago, Karen came as a package. She came with her mother in tow, who had just been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and 2 Scottish Terriers. So I am really grateful. Mary Jane passed away about 14 years ago in my living room, and it was just an honor to be part of that part of her life, and she really did find joy in that time. And then next to her is Karen's dad. He was a Boilermaker. Worked in the shipyards, worked building dams. In Alaska, he worked in Navajo country. He was not part of her life as you would expect a dad to be. He was absent most of the time, but still holds a great place in Karen's heart.
Thank you so much for bringing them. All right, and then we have a beautiful color photograph next to that. Is that Jude? No? Who's? Who?
That's,
Yeah, stand up and tell us.
Yes, sorry, yeah, this is color.
Yes, it is.
That is my beloved David Craddock, who is also known as Smiling Dave or Piano Dave, Bay Street Piano Dave. He's in the man, and the man was in the music, and he brought it to me. I call him his hands, Mr. Magic.
That's good.
And,
It's been very recently that he just
yes,
passed.
he passed 6 months ago on the 12th. And he was, to me, and to a great many people, a large fixture of our community. Volunteer all over the place. The music was in the band, and the band was in the music.
Thank you, thank you. Did I miss anyone up there? I don't think so. We have some other names there of folks who have been part of our fellowship who have passed. Jerry's there. Helen.
Some of you remember Kevin, who, like what Judy said, when he passed, that it looked like he had been, had a rough life, and I used to give him rides, and we became friends.
He used to sit in the back.
Sit in the
drink
back,
coffee.
and, you know, and you didn't know. No. Anyway, we would talk, and he was not easy to understand sometimes, and I didn't want to cry, because he was different, and he told me that he had grown up here in Florence, that his parents had owned the bowling alley, and so he worked in the bowling alley, and also he worked as a manager for some apartments. And if I have the story right, he had been involved in a automobile and bicycle accident, and that left him less able to
Function.
function. Thank you. He was very sweet. He really liked coming here. He lived across the street, so it was real convenient.
Nice.
I think at first he just came here for the coffee, but then he,
That was clear.
yeah, he stayed around for
The fellowship.
yeah, the us.
Thank you.
And also, he didn't say a lot to a lot of people. But one day he was sitting back there, and when Ruth went back there, he said something like, "That was really good." And it was just sweet. He was deeper than he looked.
Thank you, Helen. All right. And then, Jerry's name is up here. Where's that?
Oh, who put his name there?
I put his name there because he's part of our community, and this is a loss this year.
about this table.
It's okay.
I have a lot of wonderful pictures of him, usually with a fish in his hand.
Wonderful.
He had two passions besides me.
Oh, nice.
Fishing and poker. He's a very good poker player and
Nice
has a
retirement.
big stash of money from playing poker. And some of you got to meet him. I'm sorry that not everybody did. He passed in February. So
Yeah.
thank you for your support.
Yeah. I feel the hole where he was. Thank you. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
beating up on myself if I don't finish the story a little bit.
One more sentence.
That spoon is the spoon that he gifted me a couple of days after.
Okay, can I tell that story for you so you don't have to choke up over it? All right. So she shared this with me. There's a little tiny spoon there.
It's a baby spoon, his baby spoon.
When, after he had passed, she was realizing that she needed to have a spoon right there to be able to reach something that she regularly opens up and uses. And she couldn't find one. She thought a little spoon would be a good thing. And like a couple of days later, she went to the rack, the place where she kept all his photographs, and there was a tiny spoon.
Wow.
And that's a perfect lead-in.
I couldn't take off all the tarnish, so I took the tarnish off the back.
I got it. So, yes, that's a lead-in to what I have to say. So thank you, Jude. My goodness. So when the physical body isn't here, it is a loss. The person that you touched, the things you did together, you're not doing anymore. That is a loss, and we want to recognize that, acknowledge that, and grieve that loss. But I think we need to rethink everything we were ever told about what's happened here. All right? Now, I know every human being is curious about life after death. I know that I'm not unique in that. But I've had the unique opportunity since about 8 years old to be able to study what the work is that's going on and what people are sharing and understanding about what happens in this process. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was marvelous because she woke us up to this side of the process. We had buried it. We wouldn't talk about it. We wouldn't prepare people for it. We had no idea what was going on this side, right?
Yeah.
But then there was this big gap. What then? What goes on the other side, right? So I'm drawing on 3 bodies of material. Since 1975, there have been 3,000 documented cases where they've been carefully analyzed by 55 different researchers on near-death experiences. All right? And what's really interesting is across those 3,000 cases, the stories are like 89% consistent. And if you add in one other factor, it's 100%. All right? And I'll get into that other factor in a minute. The second body of material that I'm working with is hypnosis. Psychiatrists, one of the tools that they use is to regress you to your infancy or to your young childhood to find out what's going on with the issues you're dealing with today. Well, it turned out that kind of accidentally, along about the 60s, some psychiatrists would find themselves hearing about what was going on in the womb, and sometimes how they got into the womb, and sometimes what was going on before the womb, and sometimes they'd start hearing these remarkable stories about something else entirely in some other place on the planet at some other time. And that began to be known as past life regression, and then life between lives. Now, one institute, the Newton Institute, has 7,000 records. 7,000 records for this. And again, with about 90 to 92% consistency in what comes back through those results. Now, the third piece of information, collection of information, is the work I've been doing with the Institute of Noetic Sciences on what is variously called channeling, mediumship, etc. Okay? They are currently doing a number of things with EEGs and all kinds of things on what is going on that is different when a medium is accessing information that isn't available in the physical form, that's different from the various other brain states we already know about. It's very cool. And you can go to the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is noetic.org, anytime and find out. And in that material, we have thousands and thousands, I mean tens of thousands of records of three different kinds of things. Okay? One of them is people are connecting with people who have passed on that they love, the beloveds. Okay? The second, and that I call that mediumship. Okay? If someone's, so-and-so's aunt is standing there telling me something, or if I've been able to go into a trance and have so-and-so talk through me or whatever, that's being a medium. All right? The second form is what I call channeling. It's a broader form. That's accessing this kind of information from a variety of sources. You'll hear about Pleiadians, so you can, it's not Palladians, by the way, it's Pleiadians, like nuclear. Anyway. But all in that kind, Archangel Michael, and Mary Magdalene, all those people, or the higher self, or over Soul 7, or Seth, or Abraham, those are channels, okay? And they're accessing a variety of sources. And the third piece in that realm is what's called instrumental transcommunication, or EVP, electronic voice phenomena. And that is where people have some kind of receiver with some kind of speakers, and they are able to access somehow some voices that say something, right? Now, if you watch, I think it's on the History Channel, maybe A&E, I don't watch TV, so I don't remember what channels, but there are guys that are doing these on TV. You can, and they'll be recording and they'll be taking photographs, and every now and then you can actually hear the voice on their recordings, okay? The most accurate and consistent one is a guy in Italy, Bacci, Marcus Bacci, B-A-C-C-I, and he has done thousands and thousands of recordings, and one of the guys that I work with, a man named Irvin Laszlo, a systems scientist who worked with Clever Romek in the 60s and 70s. Anyway, Irvin Laszlo has actually studied, been there and been present, and had people speak through this Italian radio to him in Hungarian, specifically to his kid nickname. All right, and other people in the room hear it. So ITC, instrumental transcommunication, is the third way that the whole realm of channeling mediumship happens. Okay, we have tens of thousands, and if I include the British Royal Society, we'll go to the hundreds of thousands of documents there. So those are the sources of my information. Wow. Yeah. So what's interesting is, they all say pretty much the same thing. And if you want a visual of what they have to say, it turns out the two most accurate movies out there are Robin Williams' What Dreams May Come. All right? It gives you a very, very clear sense of the feeling just on the other side. That part of what's really going on here is kind of blurry, it's all light, I don't know what's going on, and then the reconnecting. There is one that's a little less accurate, but it's kind of cool, 5 people you meet right after death. Right in heaven, the 5 people you first meet in heaven. That's a cool movie. It's got a great Shirley MacLaine part in. And then there's a movie that came out in the 90s, actually 91, with Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks. And Albert Brooks wrote and produced and starred this. It's called Defending Your Life. Now, the specific imagery in it is actually wonderful, because it's a guy from LA and he experiences what everyone experiences, but he lays his idea of what those things could look like on what everybody experiences. And that's what we all do. We lay our belief system on what is emerging on the other side of the veil. So he goes to Disneyland. And he goes and he stays in a hotel while he's in this transition from the physical body to his next life. Okay? And he meets this wonderful woman, Meryl Streep, who stays in a much better hotel. And it goes on from there. So Defending Your Life gives us all the stages of that. Now, from the near-death experience, if you haven't seen the Daniel Brinkley Saved by the Light movie or read the book, there's another very accurate rendition. He's an NDE, near-death experience. He actually was clinically dead 3 times and came back to tell us the story each time. So there's some examples out there if you need the visual. If you want to read about it, my favorite book is The Education of Oversoul 7. There's a whole trilogy by Jane Roberts. It's her attempt to bring into our experience what Seth has to say. So there you have where you can go to get more detail. The essence of what I'm going to give you is, in all these accounts, there is the feeling that I'm in this body and I'm trapped and I'm frustrated, that turns into a feeling of peace and an opening. For the vast majority of Americans, that opening is a dark tunnel. That's not true in every other culture. Okay? In many other cultures, it's just an opening into the light directly. So we don't know why Americans have one, and we have, yeah, but that seems to be the case. Anyway, so there's this opening, and there is a kind of a pull into the opening. We're pulled into it. We want to go there, and there is a pull from the other side. And the more we are pulled into it, the more light and love and lightness and peace there is, approaching incredible bliss and joy. And as we are pulled into this, if we'll use the tunnel, of course, we're feeling more light, and we experience that as a seeing light. It's both. Can you feel that? The metaphor and the concept become one on the other side. Much more than here. We've got barriers to it on here. But it's much more obvious as you get on the other side. So the moment you have a thought, for example, in the movie Defending Your Life, he has the feeling, I'm being taken somewhere I don't understand. So he feels like he's being pushed around in a wheelchair. Okay? So, that kind of thing. A lot of people describe a great transit station, right? And they all have their different version of what a transit station looks like. So however it works, we lay our metaphor on the experience, right? So as we're being drawn into this lightness, we experience bright light. Make sense? And we start to experience folks showing up to help us and guide us and show us how much they love us. Now, different accounts say those folks are different people. They might be family members, or if someone's been doing a lot of spiritual work, it might be their spirit guides, or if they're really into the angelic work, it might be the angels. Some people actually have extraterrestrials show up. It's, the form varies, but it's always, who do I feel really connected, resonant, and supported and loved by? They are there. Now, some of them might not be people we remember very well. There was a wonderful movie, Resurrection, with Ellen Burstyn, one of my favorite movies ever. And as she's going through this experience, there's a couple of guys there she doesn't really recognize. They passed on when she was tiny, but they were part of her loving circle. And she sees them in a photo album later, and she makes the connection, right? So this is consistent, time and time again. We can almost guarantee that everyone who goes through the process of leaving the physical body is still living. They've just left the physical body, and it's going on to something else that is more and more love and light. Now, the next stage, after there is the reconnection with this sense of love and light and bliss and joy, is the realization that I just went through a whole bunch of stuff and I need to figure that all out. And usually there is some presence that is there to help. Now everyone defines that presence differently depending on what they're bringing, because the concept and the metaphor and the image and the symbol get all mushed together. So it might be God on a throne. It might be my aunt. It might be my favorite teacher. It might be that there's, as Daniel Brinkley experienced, there's this kind of humanoid sort of form that's all light and this deep resonating presence that filters sound into me somehow, and I get the idea of what is being said.
Cool.
Yeah. And together we go through, what did I do while I was in this body? Did I accomplish what I set out to accomplish? And if I cause pain, guess what I get to experience? And if I cause joy, guess what I get to experience? The fabulous thing about the Daniel Brinkley work is that the guy started out really a mess. He was a really nasty guy. I mean, he would punch you before he'd say hi. Okay, he was a really nasty guy. So the first time lightning struck him through a telephone, he's in the space with this glowing being, and he's feeling all the pain he has inflicted on any other being. It's not fun. And he comes back a different person. And that's the next thing. In all those NDEs, everyone comes back changed. You see that in the movie Resurrection very clearly. You also see it in Saved by the Light very clearly. They come back changed. They come back aware there is no need to be afraid of death. Huge. We are all interconnected. We cannot feel like someone is separated from me, and we are never alone. And many people come back with the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Prophecy, healing, deeper wisdom, teaching, etc. It's beautiful. So, for me, I consider an intense diagnosis a wake-up call, and an NDE a bash on the side of the head. Pay attention. This is who you really are. Start living that way. Right? Now, just one more little bit of data. In 1992 Gallup poll, I think that's the most recent one, it's the least, most recent I could find, did a poll of Americans and found that 5% of the American population has had NDEs in each year. That means 775 people a day are having near-death experiences in the U.S. It is not uncommon. It is not an impossible thing. It is part of the human experience. And in America, we really need wake-up calls. And we often need to be bashed on the side of the head. Because the culture is so anti-spiritual. We are a materialist culture. We say the body is all there is. And there are Unitarian congregations I would not be allowed to say a word I just said. I would not be able to give this sermon or this talk or whatever this is in some Unitarian congregations because they are so committed to the materialist view that consciousness must end when the brain is dead. And wow, we really need to be whacked on the side of the head. It's not that they aren't good people doing good things in the world, it's that they've been convinced that there is nothing except. When the data does not support that conviction. When you have the kind of data I've laid out here, and the kind of consistencies, all right, it goes on from there. There's this process, you've had this review, and then you make some selections. What do I want to go on next to learn how to do? Do I want to learn how to be this? Do I want to develop this skill? And then you go on into an educational process. And as you're going on in the educational process, you get to a point where you go, I think I'd like to apply this. And someone says, really, are you sure? And then if you say yes, then they say, okay, you get back to the transit station and we'll kind of review the possibilities here. And you get to look at this resonant group of folks that you have been incarnating with over the centuries, over and over and over again, and you get to choose which time and place in all of the possibilities of time and place. Like you could go from here to the 16th century or the 9th century or the 25th century. You know, that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's the right resonance for you to accomplish what you are saying you are ready to accomplish. And you don't have to come back. You don't have to come back to Earth. You can go back to another planet.